Welcome back to Afternoon Live. Our next guest's father created the iconic Star Trek character, Mr. Spock. In a new memoir, Leonard Nimoy's son, Adam, shares their rocky father-son relationship, their journey through troubled marriages, addictions, and finally, reconciliation. We welcome to Afternoon Live the author of The Most Human, Adam Nimoy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about the process of writing the book. How long did it take you? Because you cover so much of you and your dad's lives.
It took about 60 years.
Okay, it makes sense. There's a lot in there.
Well, there is a lot in there. It did take several years to kind of figure out what the book was going to be about.
Yeah.
The last couple of years I was really focusing on this relationship with my dad. There are a number of other relationships in the book as well. But it was a very therapeutic and really kind of like rewarding experience.
Yeah. Did it kind of spark when you did the Spock documentary? Was that 2015, 2016? After that, did you kind of think, wait a minute, there's more of a story to tell of the two of you's relationship?
Yeah, that's quite true, actually. The Spock documentary, we really focused on the Spock character, the origin and evolution of the character, and then we focused a lot on my dad and his career as an artist, as a Renaissance man. And then the third story we sort of, kind of shoehorned in there was the father and son relationship. And it just felt like, I'm in 12-step recovery and I would share that story anonymously. People don't know I'm related to Leonard Nimoy, but it resonated so much with people who had dysfunction in their family with a parent or a sibling that I just felt like it deserves a deeper dive.
Most of us do have some level of dysfunction with someone, so there is a lot of human characteristics as the title alludes to. You're very honest and raw in the storytelling. How has your family's reaction been to reading this?
Well, most of my family, I read the book to them before we even went to publication to get their approval. My sister said, no, you're not going to include that episode in there, and I took it out. And my son said the same thing. He said, no, that's not going in, and I was fine with that. They've been very supportive of it. They think that it's a story worth telling and that it might resonate with other people.
For sure. I think a lot of people will connect to it. Your son, Jonah, can you tell us the kind of the significance of Jonah in the book, watching your dad in temple tell that story? You name your son Jonah, and then you kind of have this full circle moment at the end where you're up kind of following your dad's footsteps.
Well, yeah, Jonah is much like my dad. He was academically challenged, let me put it that way. And he was very much going to be in music, the artist in the family, with no interest in an academic career, exactly like my dad.
Yeah.
He has ended up with The Offspring, this huge punk band. They're twice his age, but he's been with them for 7 years. They travel the world. Yeah, it's incredible what he's doing now with them. But my dad really recognized in Jonah the artist in him that his own parents could not recognize in my dad. And it was a really nice connection between the two of them.
That's super special, especially for that grandparent figure to have that connection with somebody a couple of generations away from them. So tell me about your early childhood, because you have memories of your dad growing up before Star Trek hit, when he was more of a struggling actor, and then kind of overnight your lives probably changed.
Well, yeah, my dad was a real hustler. He inherited that from the work ethic he learned during the Depression and growing up in Boston. So he wasn't around very much. He was always working odd jobs while playing bit roles in TV shows and movies. So he was really not around, and we were kind of a hand-to-mouth family. I mean, it was a struggle, let me say that. And I'm grateful that I can remember some of that, because things did change overnight for us when Star Trek came on the air.
And you had a great appreciation as well later on for all the things that your mother did to support your dad when things weren't going great, and then kind of hold the household down when your dad was away a lot working all the time.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. The unsung hero was my mother.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, she never questioned him in his career, even when it was very, difficult for them, a challenge for them. She was always supportive of my dad. She helped him memorize lines at night. She was basically single parenting my sister and I, and she was also the one who really gave us the nurturing and the love and the affection that my dad struggled with, those kind of emotions and expressing those kind of things.
And so many people can relate to that, I think, generationally. And you kind of learn more as an adult about what your parents experienced growing up, that your dad didn't get all that you know, it wasn't warm and fuzzy in his household with his parents when he was a kid.
No, it was not. His dad was a man of very few words. Inscrutable is a really good word to describe him. And his mother was very tough. She wore the pants in the family. And when he said he wanted to become an actor and come out to Hollywood, she was very angry with him. And even when he was successful, they were prideful. I could tell that, but they never said that they were proud of him or that they loved him.
And you also had that feeling of, even in tough times with your dad, you always carried this sense of pride in all that he had accomplished in his work, and that never went away even when you were raging mad at him for something.
That is true, and that, I think, has enabled me to tell the story and be very honest about some of the episodes, some of the conflict I had with him, because the fans don't want to hear, you know, a tell-all, and it's not a tell-all.
No.
It's a very complicated relationship. I had issues with him. I'm honest about those issues, but I never stopped saying, and I never stopped being proud of what he had accomplished.
Yeah. And what was it like for you to kind of dive a little bit deeper and write more about his alcoholism and then your journey in recovery as well? I mean, again, you're just so honest about the whole thing, which I think it's really eye-opening for people, but I think a lot of people are going through those things privately, and they'll connect to it and go, wow, you just never know what's going on behind closed doors in somebody's household.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with addiction. I mean, it's rampant, among families, and my dad confessed to his own drinking, in fact, in an interview with Bill Shatner. So he was open about it, and I just think that it was a factor that complicated our relationship to begin with. We had a complicated relationship to begin with, and a lot of conflict, also interspersed with incredible memories with my dad of his many successes. But it wasn't until we finally got into recovery that we found the tools that we needed to reconnect and really keep a close and loving relationship the last years of his life.
And you talk about it in such a relatable way of the tools of recovery, and I think even if you're not in an addiction journey, you can relate to those things, and it does help in all of our interpersonal relationships to check in every once in a while. And I was kind of noticing as well, the book is in 3 parts, and it almost feels like 3 different lifetimes that you've lived. Does it feel that way to you looking back on all those time periods in your life?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 3 parts to recovery, which was what it was like when we were out there drinking and using, what happened to us to turn our lives around, and what our life is like now. And that really was, you know, the kind of like symbolism of what happened with my dad. It was, look, it's a very difficult journey, but the fact of the matter is you don't need to be an addict to be in recovery. Everybody's recovering from something, some traumatic event that happened in their lives. The tools of recovery are just to help us reconnect with people and have stronger and more meaningful relationships, period.
Yeah.
And we needed those. My dad and I really needed those tools.
And it's a really almost poetic ending of the book, the way that you and your dad come back together when you really apply the tools and get to the heart of really reconnecting with each other, kind of what you each needed at that time.
Well, my dad became the dad I needed him to be, but he was a different person. He was not the dad I had in the 60s.
Yeah.
He had changed his priorities, which was to really focus on the family. And I was going through some personal tragedy with my second wife, who was very sick, and my dad just became my go-to guy for emotional support, and I'm so grateful for that.
Which you couldn't have imagined several years prior, picking up the phone and calling your dad in a time of need.
Impossible.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Let's talk about the title really quickly, because it is kind of an iconic Star Trek line for folks who don't know. Can you kind of explain the significance of it?
Well, it's a line from Kirk's eulogy of Spock at the end of Star Trek II at Spock's funeral. And it's just a line that seemed to really resonate. He says, of all the souls I've encountered during my journeys through the galaxies, I'm paraphrasing here, his was the most human.
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's like the theme of the book, which is that like my dad's an iconic character, and he's revered and loved by fans the world over. But he's human too, and he does have his own foibles, as do I.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to humanize him and let people know that he's just like, you know, he's a dad.
Yes.
And it's a father-son relationship like many others. It just so happens he happens to be famous.
Right. None of us are perfect in every single way.
That is correct.
You and your dad have some pretty iconic history here in Portland. We have some adorable photos of you guys in the Rose Parade. 1967?
Yes.
How cool is that?
It was amazing. I mean, I had, you know, I think it was the second time I was outside of the state of California.
That's so cool. Look at you guys.
I know.
Can you actually remember that time?
Vividly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because that was pretty early when Star Trek was just beginning to take over?
That was the first year when our lives had changed so dramatically, and we were experiencing all these incredible events. And it was quite a wonderful experience to be, in that car with my dad, driving through the streets of Portland.
What a memory. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. It was really lovely chatting with you.
Hannah, thank you for having me on.
Of course. Hey, the book again is The Most Human by Adam Nimoy, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.